Check. Check, everybody. Good morning. Check. Hi. How's everyone doing? Hi. Good morning. Happy Saturday. Hi. Hi. Hope the weather's nice where you're at. What's going on? Load those questions up, boys. Yo. Check. We good? Audio good? Looks good. Looks pretty good to me. Okay. A couple things to talk about as we start the stream here. Make sure we're all straight. Actually, just one thing to talk about. I've been running a cycle of 9-MeBC. It's 9-methyl-beta-carboline. It's one of the only known compounds that we have that isn't just dopaminergic, but also repairs kind of dopamine neuron function. Which, you know, listen, over time, I think this is probably elucidated in the Parkinson's studies, but we don't actually know the degree to which dopamine neurons get in people that don't have Parkinson's degraded, or they lose function to some level. I think that I don't know if it's genetic or ultimately what causes Parkinson's in people. I would wager it might even have to do with some medications that people take, especially medications that inhibit the firing of dopamine, one being an SSRI. But it is useful to have compounds around that are in a research chemical capacity studied for dopamine degeneration. And taking 9-MeBC always makes me feel a very, very strong kind of dopamine feeling, as well as the monoamine oxidase inhibition causing a degree of elevated neurotransmitters, which makes you feel really good. But the interesting thing about it is, like, you know, with TRT, you have a very fine, there's a strong interplay between testosterone, dopamine synthesis via upregulation of tyrosine hydroxylase, and then estrogen on the other end of the spectrum, getting too high tends to inhibit a dopamine in the limbic system, which is why estrogen past your range or when it's out of your sweet spot on the high end causes a loss of libido. You don't want that, right? So could one actually deal with a little bit of elevated estradiol but still have 9-MeBC in the picture and have their good libido? Possibly, possibly. For me, for sure, it's always having lower estrogen equals a better libido for me. Estrogen just seems to inhibit dopamine a little further for me. Below which, though, it is problematic in terms of libido. So I've been running, literally, I weigh on the scale 37 milligrams. I know that's a very odd number. I've just kind of stuck with that every single day for the last, I want to say 2.5 weeks or so. And it's been great. I don't plan to cycle off of it. I have a bunch more 9-MeBC coming in. This is one of those compounds that works very synergistically with testosterone, in my opinion. Or even, running any kind of, like, whenever you need the dopamine input where you feel like maybe estrogen is inhibiting it, 9-MeBC is a great compound to take. So I've been taking that. I would encourage other people to at least look into it to see, if it will work for you in that regard. But it's one of the best compounds I've ever taken. I don't get the photosensitivity or any sort of negative side effects from 9-MeBC at all. I feel generally better throughout the day, and my libido is a lot higher when I take it. So kind of wanted to fill you in on that. That said, hope you guys are having a fucking great Saturday. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Let's get into questions. Let's get into Bowtide's question. Bowtide? For people dealing with libido issues on PFS, is the main issue downregulated 5-AR? If so, does upregulating 5-AR fix libido issues? No. That would assume that, the conversion of TAS to DHT is the only driver of libido, which it isn't. The driver of libido is very multifold. It is difficult to say if there are, what I would wager is probably one of the drivers is, of course, a lack of, over a consistent period of time, a lack of DHT, right? I mean, if you don't have DHT and you only have test and estradiol, but DHT is lower and that ratio skewed, well, libido's fucked up. Same thing can be said, though. This is the thing. The same thing can be said for high test, super high DHT, and very, very low estrogen, especially if you're using an AI to lower it. Those are different states. Lowering it with an AI tends to crush libido, even if estrogen's at 35 or 40 or whatever for some people. But, if test and DHT are super high and estrogen is not like where you need it to be, then libido might suffer a little bit as well. So it really does come down to the balance of test, DHT, and estradiol. Again, estrogen usually has to be 25, 35 for the best erection function and the best libido for men that are on TRT. Androgens can be anywhere from 800 to 2,000. The higher you go, typically the better, so long as you don't skew that ratio and have too much test and DHT and not enough estrogen. Generally speaking, what happens when you get very high on testosterone, but you're able to successfully manage estrogen and it doesn't give you side effects or mess with libido, is that the erections are harder on more androgens. And that's just simply because of more raw DHT in penile tissues. So back to your question, circling back here, the issue is multifold, considering that libido is driven by a set of neurological sort of sequences which start from acetylcholine, actually, which then fire dopamine, oxytocin, and send signals that travel back and forth from the penis to the brain, registering, the limbic system and registering sort of the feeling of sensation and potentially even activating some pheromones. All of this is involved in libido. If there are many things that inhibit it in some of these cases or in other cases. If there's an overage of serotonin, then the proper sort of networks for libido to happen acutely do not fire as well because serotonin is inhibitory on dopamine firing, right? So all of that said, and libido being complex, back to test and stuff, it's not just that you can fix 5-AR. You may need then to go on exogenous test. I mean, most people do. Most people do. You have to look at these states as if you were hypogonadal for a while, even though your test might actually be fine. But you've not been exposed to androgens. So the same is true for if you're starving for a while. Let's just break down this analogy super quickly. If you're actually starving and you get down to 75 pounds and you're near death, if you just eat, a gigantic Big Mac meal, or fucking name your best Chick-fil-A meal, you're not going to be better. All manner of fucked up things are going to happen when you starve. Your gut bacteria is going to greatly diminish. You might have an overgrowth of pathogenic gut bacteria. Those things are going to take a lot of time to recover. Just all manner of other things. I mean, your bone mineral density is probably going to go down significantly, and your brain will have been starved of glucose for a long time, so cellular function might be in some sort of impaired state. In which case, you're going to need to have adequate food intake, and not starving for the next 3 months, 6 months, to even get to the point where your body composition is back where it was, and then where you're starting to recover. And it may take you 6 months to a year after starving for 6 months to fully recover. So that the same can be said about, androgen, specifically TRT, and, test and DHT when you've been starved of it for a long time. Then it's just about the right protocol. The right protocol. And again, for people that tend to over aromatize, which is the case for PFS people, and tend to under reduce your testosterone to DHT, the best possible strategy that you can do is, number one, have pretty high androgens, 1,000 to 2,000 nanograms per deciliter total test, as high free test as you can get. But with estrogen in a sweet spot range for you, again, usually 25 to 45, call it, if you can tolerate the use of AIs. The only way you're going to be able to do that is with AIs or DHT derivatives. On the other hand, if you can't figure out how to tolerate them, because some people, whether they're pretty practical or pretty strategic in their strategy to try to get an AI to work or DHT derivative to work, it's not going to. And you're just going to have to low dose test and add a non-aromatizable androgen like Anavar if you want energy and anabolism, particularly anabolism on top of that. But once you get down to that place where the test is high enough, just needs to be high enough, and the estrogen is not out of control, and it's in your Goldilocks zone, which tends to be sort of kind of a fine little window for people. That's what's so tricky about TRT, is getting in that window while still getting the benefits of the androgens. Well, then you get better. Then you get better from post-finasteride syndrome like sexual dysfunction. It's just what it is. So it's not as simple as upregulating 5-AR because, well, where's the androgens? You were starved for a while, you need more. Hope that makes sense. Simon Stone, hey, brother. Hello, brother. That'd be great. What are your total test levels at on this dose of test? I don't know yet, but I would wager there's somewhere around 700. Yeah, I'm on 100 milligrams of test a week right now, 6 milligrams Anavar a day. The Anavar is actually shutting me down and requiring more HCG. I've noticed, I've been on it for 3 weeks, but as of the last 3 days, it's been... I've had some noticeable testicular atrophy, and that tends to fuck with sexual function. So I've got to up the HCG in order to compensate for that. So that's all been good. So we'll see what happens regarding that. But test, I would say, is probably, at the very low is 650. At the highest, probably 750. Historically around these doses, judging by where I go on other doses, I'm probably at about 700, something like that. Yeah, and I feel great, but the Anavar really does add an extra bit of energy to the mix. And Well, so does caffeine. But at the same time, I'm dosing some 9-MeBC right now. So I really do not notice having like low TAS. You know, one of the reasons like TAS contributes to energy so much is the synthesis of dopamine, right? It's a major part of it. But it's also upregulating CAMP and a bunch of sort of cellular biological aspects of energy production. So, you know, there's that. Interestingly, I feel as good on 100 milligrams of TAS with a little bit of Anavar every day as I did on Cycle, you know, with half a gram of TAS, where I felt fucking crazy, you know, in terms of energy. So that's where we're at, brother. Hello, Ryan. I've tried Bromantane powder in the past, but either felt nothing or just relaxed or no stimulation. I tried 50 to 200 milligrams with olive oil without. What about nasal? I think if Bromantane orally is not working for you, you've got to figure out what it's doing. It may be helping you to synthesize a little more serotonin, because one of the things it does is I think it upregulates dopa decarboxylase, which I believe it does synthesize dopamine, or is one part of that, but it may actually interplay with the synthesis of serotonin as well. So that kind of thing happens to people. At the same time, I can't really diagnose or at least help you to understand what is happening with a lack of response without context of your situation, because there could be many things in your regimen that are completely blocking the effect of Bromantane. That happens a lot. What's up, Cortex crew? Saturday streams hit harder than my morning dose of motivation. Let's go, bro. Today I had a cup of coffee with my girlfriend outside, and then Starbucks double shot. So those things are fucking phenomenal. 140 calories, good amount of caffeine, and now I'm drinking a Red Bull. You know, dosed the TAS and the anabolics this morning, dosed a bunch of tocotrienols and some desiccated thyroid. So your boy is awake. I'm using 600 milligrams of TAS, 300 Masteron, 100 of Tren. Wow. And 350 of Anavar a week? No way, dude. You're running 50 milligrams of Anavar a day? How are you alive? Or how do you not have side effects? For TRT, don't really notice any difference in how I feel between this and the 200 milligrams of TAS a week. Interesting. You might be metabolizing the shit too quickly. I mean, that's entirely possible. I don't know how long you've been running this, so in time, if side effects are going to come about, they are. But then, listen, there are some people, for whatever reason, you know, are just super lucky enough to be able to run loads and loads and loads of anabolics and not have side effects, you know. I'm not necessarily one of those right away. I've got to work up. You know, working up to half a gram of TAS, I had some side effects, and then I figured that out, and then I didn't have side effects anymore. The body takes a long time to get used to it. Crazy shit about like this whole workup period is like when I first got on TRT years ago, if I was running 52 milligrams sub Q every other day, I had side effects. You know, I was like anxious at night and whatever. Kind of felt overstimulated, had a little problem sleeping. You know what I mean? Like now, that's nothing to me. You know what I mean? I would just feel great. You know. And again, I worked up to half a gram of TAS and felt phenomenal. So there's as your body adjusts as hormone levels go up, and then your body does what it always does, which is just try to get used to the new homeostasis and maybe downregulate some of the response. I mean, there's no question that sort of stuff happens in these cases, and then you end up feeling great. Maybe body decides I'm not going to use a lot of this test for the neurological stuff. You know, the brain kind of regulates receptor-wise in response to, you know, test and estradiol. And so kind of always trying to go back to homeostasis. Your body is fighting to make you feel good all the time. So, you know, who knows what's happening in this situation. Ryan Gooden, current 20% DHT gel is more like oil. It is. Yeah, I've said that. It runs all over the place. Using the dropper to dose accurately is hard. Do they have an accurate actual gel that comes? No. There is no high potency DHT with a gel consistency. It is more of an oil-like consistency. And so you have to just drop one drop at a time, you know, 0.25 milliliters, whatever you end up dosing, and rub it in. You can figure that out. Rub it in. Same thing with the shaft. You're going to drop it on, you're going to drop a drop on the shaft, rub it in, make sure it's in there, drop another drop, rub it in, make sure it's in there. Don't try to drop the entire 0.5 milliliters or whatever you're dosing at once, because it is going to run all over the place. Yeah. And also you can make the DHT yourself, but at the same time, if you do that, like, you know, the homemade 20% DHT gel that I made was not comparable to the DHT, you know, gel that comes from, you know, that we talk about, the 20%. It just wasn't comparable. So, and that's probably because I couldn't actually mix it enough for my own personal use to dissolve all of the actual powder DHT. It's a whole different process when it's done much more correctly, or much more, I wouldn't call it in a pharmaceutical preparation manner, but, you know, closer to that. Does Masteron upregulate androgen receptors, and if so, how many milligrams per week to add to TRT for that, in your opinion? I do not have anything in the literature that suggested that happens. I mean, androgens in general tend to ultimately make you build a little more ARs to deal with the androgens that you're, putting in the body. Testosterone is one of the only things that's sort of the opposite to other things. If you're blasting a particular neurotransmitter like dopamine, just blasting a bunch of dopamine, then you might get a degree of sort of down regulatory response. In response to that, testosterone is kind of the opposite. Masteron, though, I don't know. I don't know if that's in the literature. We know it blocks estrogen receptors, and we know it acts as a mild AI. And we know that it's pretty potent at the AR. It's pretty potent at binding to the AR. As far as upregulating the ARs, it's not something I'd look into, but it's pretty plausible. Anthony, thoughts on estrogen conversion with prop every day versus every other day? 30 milligrams every day versus 60 every other day. Like the lower spike with ED with every day, or the higher spike with EOD, but the extra day to possibly let it clear out in a sense. You're just going to have to find out what works for you. I don't think there's any better protocol. Quite frankly, it's just the same is true for every protocol. Whatever allows estrogen to be as consistently as possible in the range that makes sense for you, and you're going to have to sort of figure that out. They'll figure that out. The higher you go on prop, anything above 25 milligrams for me personally, then you got to manage estrogen a little bit, just because for certain periods of the day, it's going to be higher than you want to, and you might have fluctuating libido and erections. It might not just be perfect all the time. That's one of the risks you run with prop, is that the effect that you get isn't going to be consistent because it's sort of fluctuating a lot. So you have to try to figure out how to balance that out. Do I track food? No. Nope. I definitely do not track food. I used to over the years. Listen, you got to eventually get to the point where when you're eating, if you're going over in terms of calories based on how full you are or how full you are. People haven't developed, I've talked to many people who haven't developed the ability to notice that and see like when I'm overeating, when you're overeating, and you have to be able to notice that based on how full you are. If I'm going to bed not hungry but on a light stomach, I know that I've done well. If you're going to bed with a heavy stomach, almost definitely you've overeaten. Unless you didn't eat anything all day and then you eat you do that one meal a day sort of thing and you're doing it at nighttime, in which case, that's all going to balance out. But this is something that people have to try to pay attention to themselves, for themselves, to understand. To give you a more 5,000 foot view on that, I like to stay maintenance as many days as possible. Maintenance calories, so basically with the amount of calories where I won't gain or lose weight. The moment that, my girl and I order a pizza, or if I, tend to eat takeout from Condado's Tacos here in Pittsburgh, first of all, I'll plan that so that I don't go over earlier in the day. I won't eat as much, and I'll make sure I get a run in, so that I'm kind of end up in maintenance anyway. But if I do overeat for the next 2 days, and I notice it on particularly belly fat, and my face gets a little puffy and I start noticing that shit, well, then I'm going to eat a little less for the next 2 days until I get back to that place of pretty lean, at which point I could overeat again if I want to. You know what I mean? That's how you have to balance it. A year ago, I was getting my hair cut, and this old Italian guy was one of the guys that used to cut my hair. I've since moved to a different place. And this old Italian guy was talking about that. There was commercials on the TV at the barber shop for fucking, one of these injectable peptides that makes you not hungry, right? The popular peptides, which I think you need to get your hormones straight, and you need to get your fucking discipline straight. You need a peptide to tell you don't eat. And he said, I don't understand. He said in his Italian voice, he's like, I don't understand this. He's like, if you eat too much, one day, you just eat less the next couple days. And it's really that simple. Feel how full you are, go from there. What are the negative side effects you experience from higher doses of Anavar? The third day and this wasn't even a higher dose, but I have pure pharmaceutical grade, pharmaceutically prescribed from Empower Pharmacy. I mean, this is one of the best pharmacies in the country, oxandrolone. So I've got pure Anavar, dude. Vigorous Steve has talked about this. If you got pharmaceutical grade Anavar, it's fucking much powerful than what you're going to get, underground. So, dosing, I was dosing 12 milligrams or so a day. Doing that, it's probably running 25 of what you might get, outside of the pharmaceutical, when you circumvent the clinics and stuff and the pharmaceutical industry. So in that regard, what happened I felt great day 1, day 2, strong as fuck, pumps were insane. Day 3, my heart rate had jumped up to about 120 for no reason, for about a half an hour. And in that half an hour, I felt pretty tired. Yeah, I'd just gotten to my chick's house that night, and we were just going to hang out and have dinner or whatever, drinks. And I'd gotten there and kind of needed to like chill and not do anything for about a half an hour until that passed. You know, I'd run my pulse, you know, just kind of looking at a clock and you know, running my pulse, counting 15 seconds and multiplying that by 4. And my heart rate for no fucking reason was 120 beats per minute. So there's nothing good about that. That kind of shit does happen to people initially on Anavar, whether it's anxiety induced or otherwise is unclear. And so, you know, that was the point at me where I was like, well, I'll push through this and be fine tomorrow or be fine in 2 days. But I didn't want to do that. The question in my head then became, well, you know, to what degree will I have substantial anabolism and feel good, or at least enough anabolism, be stronger in the gym, unlike lower doses on an absolute microdose, which is 5 to 6 milligrams. So that's what happened. Nothing else major. I was strong as fuck. And the pumps were great, you know, and I felt, you know, extra energy on top of baseline from day one. You know, and I still feel it. That's the thing. I still now am feeling strong at the gym. My runs, like I'm going to go run directly after this down in the city. I feel phenomenal. I feel like I can go forever. But at the moment, you know, Anavar is certainly starting to shut me down a little further, which is requiring a little more HCG. There's mechanisms by which Anavar specifically can kind of atrophy the testicles, even in the presence of HCG. So it's just something to think about. Who knows what's going to... I'm monitoring that situation. Tefalshunda. Thanks for the super chat, brother. Appreciate you sharing your experience and knowledge. Keep it up, brother. Update on opening the clinic. Update as for now, not a whole lot. Still trying to figure out the business structure and the pay structure, you know, for the medical doctors that are going to be on board. And then then it's really just a matter of finding them, which I'll put it out there now. If there's any MDs watching this and you want to get out of your practice, come start an HRT clinic with me. You know, we have the client base 100%. We already have it. You know, we already have the client base, and you know, we'll get a lot of people changed over from some of the other clinics that they're currently using right now, especially because, you know, we're going to be offering a good degree of much more sort of personalized advice in the clinic. The MDs are through sort of the prism of my thinking and experience with coaching people over the years. So that's kind of what we're looking at. If I could give a time frame, you know, a year from now, it'll be completely open. But, you know, there's also some other things in the background that are going on right now, which are probably going to push that to sooner. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. It's going to be fucking awesome. You know, you have Merrick, you have Defy, you've got TRT Nation, you have Peter Uncaged, you have, well, I mean, you have Ryan Roots Clinic, and you know, a few other, just a handful of other kind of clinics. We're going to be in that group. You know, I am the best marketer I've ever met, and we'll be in that group. We'll be one of the biggest clinics in the States. Ender, hey man, awesome content. I'm taking 180 milligrams testosterone cream every morning and 500 IU HCG twice a week. Would you consider this too much HCG? Not if it doesn't push estrogen too high. That's the only reason it would be too much. If it pushes estrogen too high. And I don't think you're going to downregulate the LH, human chorionic gonadotropin receptors by doing that. You're giving it at least 3.5 days in between, so I think that's fine. Just that much HCGs, you know, unless you're dosing 70 to 100 milligrams of test a week, that much HCG is probably going to push estrogen over your limit. And you're on, you know, a good bit of cream, but some of that is converting to DHT, which may be balancing that out. So I find that to be okay. Favorite test ester? It's hard to say. It'd be a mix between prop and testosterone enanthate. So, you know, I mean, I don't know. It depends on what you're doing. With prop, for me, I like higher doses. It does cause a little hair loss, but the energy is insane. The anabolism is pretty okay. Generally, the dopaminergic energy feeling is much stronger than on any long ester. I like enanthate because it's sort of in the middle. It's not Cypionate. It does hit you faster. You do notice it quicker. It might aromatize a little more because you have a higher peak. You will have a higher peak on the same dose of enanthate versus testosterone Cypionate, slightly higher peak. Vigorous Steve and crew have done kind of research on that, and so that's definitely something that happens. So it's a mix between enanthate and prop. Now, do I hate Cypionate? Well, I think you just have to find it seems to be a little harder to find the protocol that works with Cypionate. You know what I mean? That's just one of those things, and you have to keep in mind that one of the biggest reasons I dislike it compared to these other things is that if you're trying to dial in, it takes longer. You know, it just takes longer to dial in ultimately. Joshua, can 9-MeO-BC be safely taken alongside about 3 grams of ashwagandha? Well, safely, sure, but I cannot advise you on this complex thing. If you have a more detailed question, a more nuanced question, super chat it. Started 35 of 9-MeO-BC and did 40 today. Yeah, that's the dose that I'm at, between 35 and 40. I love it. I'll be running it for another couple weeks. I have 2 new bags of 500 milligrams of 9-MeO-BC that are en route to me now to use for personal use. So I'm excited about that. Said, work had me doing 27K plus steps of cardio, was only eating around 2,700 calories a day. Yeah, that definitely lost 5 pounds in a week. How much of that do you think is muscle? On 300 milligrams a week plus 2 IU. Well, if you're on some growth hormone and 300 milligrams a week of test, you're definitely have a lot of protein synthesis in the muscle. So I would wager that you're probably keeping a good degree of that muscle. I mean, you have to look at your body and see, you know, are you losing muscle? Do you feel like you're actually losing muscle? I can tell right away, you know, whenever I lowered the test dose, if I go on lower doses of test and there's no other anabolic agent, I see the muscle. I see a lot of water retention leaving my body, so fullness leaves kind of thing. You know, the strength will be, it's so weird. It took me a while to actually build the mass that I still want to build more over the next 10 years, frankly, but it took me a while to look less skinny and, you know, just more generally anabolic to the point where even on lower doses of tests, like I still have a pretty good physique. Yeah. Jay Gosh with a $20 super chat. Thanks, brother. Really appreciate that, man. That's going to be a lot of Red Bulls and a lot of double shot that I'm going to buy. Thank you, brother. Keep up the great work. Don't let the haters get you down. You've helped us more than you know. I appreciate that, bro. If you have a question, please ask it. And I appreciate the encouragement. Yeah, you know, listen, I can't really get into the details about this because it's sort of on that line of, you know, not wanting to discuss publicly. But we're pretty sure at this point we know who has effectively attacked us as a company. And the kind of reasons that people do that, rather than like making a video about you or in response to maybe a video that you have done for about them, you know, we're talking you personally about some shit that they might disagree with you about. It's just childish to attack people. You know, we were attacked effectively in, you know, somewhat of an administrative capacity by somebody who's never even bought product from us, you know? So it's obviously somebody out there who disagrees with me in turn, you know, on philosophy and ideology relative to HRT, and almost definitely somebody who has, you know, who I've disagreed with publicly too. It's almost definitely somebody that owns a clinic in the States or is part of a clinic in the States, and almost definitely somebody who, in previous situations where I might have disparaged their ideology or this person's ideology, they had a podcast taken down because of it. Yeah, I mean, you know, just do a little thinking about who in the TRT community says outrageous shit. You know, one particularly outrageous, stupid fucking idea relative to estrogen. And, you know, who seems like a little bit of a fucking weirdo. You know, weirdo. Just a fucking weirdo, man. Fucking weirdos, bro. You know, if I ever had a problem with people, I've had problems with people and their position ideologically. I do not try to take some administrative route to get them, I don't know, to get some sort of weird attention on them, you know, from any governing body. You know what I mean? I'm a fucking man, dude. If I have a problem with you, I'm gonna turn my camera on. I'm gonna open up OBS and I'm gonna, you know, create an argument against something that you said that I think is retarded, and I'm gonna fucking say my piece on it. You know what I mean? I'm not a high school or a middle school tattletale. I'm not a little fuckhead. So, you know, I would encourage everybody to be that way. You know, if you have a problem with somebody, take it to them or do your own content about them. You don't try to like get them in trouble or be a fucking child about it. So that's all. And that's going to happen, man. I have conversations with all of the major coaches about this sort of stuff. You know, our industry, since we sort of get in the middle and the opportunity is opened for us to do coaching on certain things because, like, you know, the let's call it the classical routes that one would go to regarding these sorts of things doesn't help them the way that they need to help, you know, be helped or have it be personalized. And some people just do not get better from sexual dysfunction as an example. I mean, that's primarily what I do is fix people's sexual dysfunction. I mean, that's 99% of the consults and stuff that come through. And so, it's our industry as TRT people that, help people threatens mainstream. It just does. It does. And they know it. So, there's going to be a degree of that happens all of the time. It's happened to every one of us. I've talked to Vigorous Steve. I've talked to Alex Kickle about this. I've talked to many other coaches on the phone, man, or on Zooms about this topic. We get attacked. It's just one of those things that fucking happens. So I appreciate your message, man, and all is well. Believe me, all is well. Alp, quit TRT for fertility. You didn't need to do that. You could have taken HCG and you would have been fine. Now at 5 weeks since last injection, feeling like shit. Yeah, you shouldn't have quit TRT. PCT with Novolin and clomiphene. Thoughts on adding Proviron and HPTA suppression? Proviron will to an extent eventually. DHT does, exactly, yeah. Yeah, I would just get back on T and use HCG. Use HCG, maybe some HMG or potentially some recombinant FSH, and you'll be fine. You can have babies on TRT. Yep. You can have babies on TRT, boys. Jay Gosh, to control estrogen, I'm thinking of employing the same strategy of low test, prop 20 milligrams a day. That's good. 30 milligrams Masteron a day. Like to keep the anabolism at the same time. Does Masteron convert to E2? It will not. It'll block estrogen receptors. I forget which one. And also act as a mild AI. So it all depends. At 20 milligrams a day, I don't need an AI of prop, but it's also a little bit too low of a dose. I start making a little bit less. I start making a little bit less antidiuretic hormone. I think that's both due to a little lower estrogen than I like, but also just not enough consistent androgens around. There might be something to say for receptors in the kidneys that are the arginine vasopressin receptors that bind to them. And so when you don't have me particularly, when I don't have enough androgens in the system, then I start to ultimately not be able to retain water as well as I need to. So 20 milligrams of prop would do that to me. 25 a day is pretty much on that line where it's good for libido and erections and all that. Anything above that, I've just got to manage estrogen, which I've learned to do on prop. But I like the feeling of higher. Who attacked me, Danny or Keith? Neither of those, but you're on the right track. You're on the right track. Same organization, dude. Same fucking stupid organization of people saying, largely accurate things, but then some other things that have absolutely hurt people. And, some of these people are MDs that have given advice that has hurt people. Said defectors have come to me with high blood pressure and all manner of fucking problems because they took these idiots' advice. Yeah. Yep. If you're watching, we can fucking go to war, dude. Yeah. You will not win. You won't fucking win. Believe me. I'll fight to the fucking death. Mike, people who can't clear neurotransmitters and hormones and can't handle high doses of testosterone. I had genocyte test years ago. My genes already cleared dopamine, adrenaline, and low CERT. Oh, you've got low serotonin transporter function. Yeah, that could be the case. I mean, you might want to take some B vitamins, which would help. Like just a powerful bioavailable B complex might help in that situation for you to clear some of those neurotransmitters out. But, I think there's other things too that you could do, not really in the diet, but in terms of cardiovascular exercise, really, really helps to regulate the brain in terms of clearing neurotransmitters and kind of regulating that whole situation. Yeah. So, I mean, that might be something that you want to like. There have been times in my life where I didn't really want to do cardio, but the health benefit or just the physiologic upgrade that it provided for me at the time, it was a non-starter to not do it. I had to have it in my regimen kind of thing. Is that like that now? No, my regimen is very good and dialed in. And so I don't need to do cardio, but I love how I feel when I do it. I'm going to go run about 2 miles today just after this live stream. Slow, 10-minute pace per mile. Do you know if sometimes DHEA levels is better in the middle of the range or the upper part of the range? I think it all depends on whether or not, it's like over converting to estradiol. Some people lose a little more hair than normal on DHEA. I don't personally, unless it's above 50 milligrams, and it's especially combined with prop, it'll do that. But I run now 40 milligrams a day, 20 in the morning, 20 in the evening, and it's perfectly fucking fine. But at the same time, I'm at 100 milligrams of test a week with a little bit of Anavar. So I don't have a whole lot of aromatizable substrate. I just have a very basic amount. This is why guys will drop down and not do any of the other addition of anabolics and whatever to 100 milligrams a week, and then libido and erections are perfect. They're just like good, they feel normal and all that stuff. It's a hard thing to do because again, above those numbers, you start getting into 150 plus, and then you have to manage the metabolites. But you like the benefits of higher levels of fucking androgens. You know what I mean? So it might even be wise in those cases for some people, and this is sort of a tangent. I want to be proper here. I hate when people say etc. It's not a fucking word, man. It might be wise in some of those cases just to cycle, just to go on a cycle, half a gram or 700 milligrams of test a week. You do that for 4 months, you build a good bit of mass, and then you go right back down to 100 milligrams a week, or taper down to 100 milligrams a week kind of thing. My thoughts on 0.15 milligrams, 15 milligrams of Cypionate every day. I think that's fine. But the best thing you can do with already a slow acting ester is inject it intramuscularly. And if you don't want to puncture muscles consistently with big needles and you want to do it every day, then get 5/8 inch insulin syringes. They're hard to find, but you can find them on Amazon. I have posted that link before and done a video about it. So that's what you want to do. Yep, 5/8 inch, so that you're sure in the glute, in the delt, in the ventral glute, you're getting it in the muscle. Not sure why Vigorous Steve quit TRT for kids. Well, Vigorous Steve is not someone who prior to that was just on TRT. You're conflating the notion of being on TRT exclusively and then trying to get a girl pregnant with the use of HEG or recombinant FSH or both with someone who's dosed high loads over a long period of time of testicularly atrophying anabolic steroids. Huge difference, my friend. Huge fucking difference. So I hope you get that distinction. Joe, if there was a standard PCT protocol in mind, what would it be? I'm not a huge fan of it, unless you absolutely have to, and it also isn't my specialty, so I couldn't really give you a a strategy there. AI gaming, unless you have to. Don't do it. That'd be my strategy. Steve's fertility issues weren't his own. His wife was older and had problems conceiving. He simply did everything he could to make it happen on his end, like any good husband would. Absolutely, any good husband would, and that could be the case as well. In my last relationship, I was fertile, and good, and I couldn't get my girlfriend at the time pregnant. Thankfully, I didn't, because she's a fucking disaster of a person, but she was also an alcoholic and had a lot of, problems related to mainly that. And so she couldn't have a baby, her body was like, hell no. You're feeding me a bottle and a half of 2 bottles of Pinot Noir every fucking day, and a 12 pack of beer sometimes. I'm not having no baby. Good thing I have since met a fucking real woman. Dream big. Do you know if berberine increases acetylcholine? I don't know if it's messing with it. I don't know. Estrogen management really is it. Again, there's 2 ways to do this with TRT to make everything work. You have to find, the Aromasin, the Arimidex, the Masteron, the Primobolan, or the Proviron dose that will control estrogen for you and have enough androgens to make you feel good. And if you can make that work, you ride off into the sunset and you'll feel good. There's nothing wrong with taking an aromatase inhibitor for the rest of your life, so long as it doesn't cause any tissues to be starved of estrogen. And so long as it just, all that it does is kind of get you in the right range for sexual function. That's the biggest thing. You can have not low or deficient DHT, but it doesn't have to be skyrocketed for you to have, great erections for sex and morning erections and all that stuff. Again, I'm on 100 milligrams of test right now and 6 milligrams Anavar a day, 125 IU HCG every day. And, this morning I had like a 15-minute erection, in bed with my girlfriend, and not because necessarily she was next to me. I'm sure that helped, but it's just an automatic erection, man. John, hey, thoughts on test prop enanthate blends? I think they're good. I think it tends to work for people just given this kind of baseline of test that's always around, and then you get a peak and a trough of the other stuff. You get a peak and a trough of the other stuff. So it tends to work for the right person. It's not for everybody. Not everyone's gonna be able to take it and not have to control estrogen. Some people are still gonna have to deal with managing estrogen on that. It all comes down to the total net amount of aromatizable androgen that you have in the system. Something to think about. Petey. What's up, Petey? I feel sluggish and hypogonadal around the 12 to 14 hour mark of 2 clicks of cream. Yeah, that's just not enough. 2 clicks is not enough for me either. I feel sluggish about 1 p.m. if I do that in the morning. Yep. Yeah. And that's because I'm probably at 500, 550 of test. That's like about where it peaks. A lot of it's converting to DHT. Yeah. Yep. That's what I would, that's not enough for me. And mine was 200 milligrams per milliliter. So 3 pumps though in the morning is enough. 3 pumps is just right there, right? It's perfect. 3 pumps is perfect. For me personally, it's fucking perfect. 2 pumps, I'm tired by 1 p.m. My gym sessions suck shit. It'd be the same thing as dosing 70 milligrams a week of test. I can tolerate, my cutoff point for the amount of androgens, would be 3 pumps of cream. Anything below that, I'm tired and I don't feel good. For test, it's like, between 100 and 112 milligrams a week. Any lower than 100, and then I start feeling wacky. And that's just kind of, with test prop, it's anything lower than 25 milligrams a day, and I feel wacky. So just got to find that dose, man. Even if it's 2.5 clicks, 2.5 clicks might be it if you're trying to make sure your estrogen doesn't go too high. AI Gaming Official says, as a cardiologist, please use Aromasin. Yes, this is true. If you're going to use an AI, I see people's lipids deteriorate all the time with Arimidex within the community. Yeah, this is not surprising. It's not fucking surprising to have that happen. I don't think Arimidex is the best drug for this. I really don't. Generally speaking, I don't want to make blanket statements. Some people use it and they're fine. But, yes, yeah, there is a degree of, I forget exactly some of the mechanism by which it's inhibiting, something relative to cholesterol or whatever it ends up doing. But yeah, it's not good to skew your lipids if you're taking a lot of Arimidex, you're taking it consistently. Aromasin is a lot more seemingly lipid friendly for people. So definitely use it. If you can find that dose that works, even if it's 3.25 milligrams every 7 days or so, then that's what you should do. That's what you should do. Mike, every time I go past 120 milligrams of test, I get anxious. Why am I so sensitive to higher doses? It's just because, you haven't pushed through that. The moment you can push through that and stay there for 2 weeks, it's going to go away. It's going to go away. Remember, like I said before, on 52 milligrams every other day sub-Q test sip, I felt anxious as fuck. This is in the very beginning, years back when I started TRT. And I couldn't sleep. I was like, what the fuck's going on? Then I ran a cycle of 0.5 gram, almost 600 milligrams, 40 milligrams short of 600 milligrams a week. And I was beautiful. But working up to that, I had test flu for 3-4 days. I felt like I had a legit flu. Was tired all day. I just felt fucked up. So I had to go back down, use prop at 420 for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then I moved back up to 560 of enanthate and I was fine. I don't know how I can't explain that, but this sort of stuff happens. So if you push through that and stay on it, that'll go away eventually. It's just going to take some time. And if it doesn't, you got to figure out like what is happening on the neurotransmitter side that you can try to quell that. There's all matter if this is what biohacking is. Do I need a couple 100 milligrams of L-theanine, increase serotonergic and GABAergic transmission in the brain? Jay Gosh, when you open your clinic, will you try to get other compounds available like Test Prop and Masteron? Prop 100%. Masteron is not, I don't believe, that we can schedule that or we can prescribe that here in the States. But yeah, prop is one of those things that since Defy stopped it, which I think was foolish, that we would 100% capitalize on. Anything that's actually legal for us to do, we'll do. Anything within the legal bounds, we'll do as a clinic for sure. I recently got an estrogen test and the range is 50 to 250. Is that the wrong test? Should have been E2. Well, you want to look at estradiol sensitive, and no, 50 to 250 is not the right test. It's probably one of these online, send it to your house kind of things. You want to go to discountedlabs.com. You want to purchase estradiol ultra sensitive. You want to have them send it to Quest, and then you go run that. That's what you want to do. The range there will be, 0 to 29 picograms per milliliter, but it'll measure all the way up until, 200 picograms per milliliter, but you're not going to be that high. Do I feel low trophin every other day? If it's below 40, if it's 40 milligrams or below every other day, and then I feel pretty fucked up on the next day at about 5 p.m. Yeah. I got to do, if I'm doing every other day, at least 70, 80 milligrams to be safe every other day. Yep. Yeah. And there's no telling how quickly you actually clear prop from the system. Some people just clear it faster than other people, based on all variety of metabolic things. You know what I mean? It's not just that it's got the same half-life, as we think it does or what the literature says. It's all different between people. Alp has used Aromasin and Adex in the past, but want to try Primo instead, slowly titrating up. Just based on morning wood. Just watch and make sure that it's very easy with any aromatase inhibitor, but including Primobolan, which acts as an AI or metabolizes into a compound that acts as an AI, to fuck with your sexual function. It's just very easy to do that. So you got to be careful. I cannot tolerate lots of Primobolan. Like I can't even tolerate a little bit of Primobolan. I have to dose. I got to be dosing just lots of prop. So I got like a good bit of peak in aromatization. I got to take lots of HCG, and that complicates things. It just complicates things. So that's just one of those things that happens, man. Sammy, I'm now on 175 milligrams of Testy every 3 days. Okay, so you're definitely on a mini cycle there. I feel amazing. Take 0.5, 0.7 of Arimidex on shot day. Is a sustainable long-term neurogen for hematocrit? Yeah. Well, you're going to have to find out. As long as you don't have any joint pain or any otherwise arthralgia, then I think you would be fine on that. But regarding that, you got to look at the scientific literature on that, which suggests that you take a drug holiday if you're consistently dosing Arimidex. So, that's something to consider there if I were you, to run by your hormone doctor, and just to keep kind of in your head if you're sort of managing this yourself. And look at your lipids. If they get skewed in any negative way, then that might be the indication to back off of the Arimidex, dude. And then try to find a dose of Aromasin that makes sense. Run this for some time, and then cycle back down to pretty low TRT, so you don't need an AI. And then your body recovers if there's any degree of damage that it's doing. It's something that we do in this world. If we're running 25 milligrams of Anavar a day for 8 weeks, bloods might get fucked up. Then we back up. We let everything regulate. HDL comes back up. LDL comes back down. Jim Feo, 120 milligrams of Test C, no benefits. I get aches, headaches, and panic attack when I'm going to have a heart attack. Well, you're not going to have a heart attack on test. What blood test do I need to figure out the issue? Estradiol sensitive, buddy. Mike, what natural compounds can effectively lower lipids and high blood pressure? Tocotrienols would be pretty good for lipids because they effectively act like statins. Regarding blood pressure, 10 milligrams tadalafil a day. Otherwise, kind of forget the name of the drug. Vigorous Steve would be more of a person to ask for that because he's got a lot of. Because in the bodybuilding community, they're pushing higher BP just because they're pushing a lot more anabolic compounds. Ryan, hello to you as well, bro. Hope all is well, and everyone on the chat. Ryan says, "What's up, everybody? What's up, bro? What's up, Ryan? Let's get a W. Let's get a W in the chat for Ryan. W, Ryan. W, bro. Alp, I wonder if low libido for Primo is only E2 related. I would wager it is, because to me, when I take too much Primobolan on top of test and I get low libido, it's the same feeling as if I took too much Arimidex or Aromasin. So the answer is yes. Yes. Can androgens downregulate dopamine receptors? No. Nope. Biscuffed. On stable TRT, where would you start with DHT for mental? 35 years of low T plus abusive childhood, serious struggle with any confrontations, 12.5 milligrams Proviron, and adjust there based on any results. So if you're running, what's your dose of T? Where would you start with DHT? Quite frankly, it's hard to say. If you manage to get your hands on 20% DHT gel, which is more of an oil base, then 0.25 milliliters would be a sensible dose, in my opinion, every other day to start with, and just sort of see kind of where you end up. Might be useful to take some Proviron because it is methylated DHT, so it's pretty close to DHT. It does cause the same hair loss that DHT causes. DHT is just a little more powerful and sits longer at the receptor and disassociates less. And Proviron has a higher affinity, though, for the sex hormone binding globulin. So, these are different drugs, but, Proviron will certainly be a good start to see how you respond to DHT. And then your best bet is to ask ChatGPT what the conversion, is between 12.5 milligrams of Proviron and like 0.25 milliliters every other day of 20% DHT gel applied transdermally. So that you can kind of see, is that the same as taking 12.5 milligrams Proviron? Which it isn't. It definitely isn't. But you can find a comparable dose. Poor choices as fuck. Test Primo, a 4-to-1 ratio crashes my E2. Yeah, see, this is the thing. Me too. I mean, me too. I just basically get a lack of libido, and it's a it's a problem. So I hate it. I honestly just do not like it. I have to dose a lot of prop and a lot of HCG to be able to tolerate Primobolan, but I love what Primobolan does to my physique in the short periods that I ran it. I mean, I started seeing it after a couple days. I was just looking at that physique like, holy fuck, man. My ARs must love that shit. You know, the skeletal tissue and the muscle tissue, they just love it. Hold on one second. Sorry, boys. Okay. Trey, if you want to send me a screenshot, you can. Send it at ryan@livecortex.com. Ryan is in the chat giving people a little bit of giving people some encouragement. All right, boys, I got to end the stream. Something just came up. So great fucking questions today, guys. Yeah, this is insane. I'm going to try to work it to do a little more streams during the week. I think these are very valuable and useful to people. This Tuesday, check out Ryan Root's channel, Hormones for Me. I will be on there at 7 p.m. Eastern time doing a stream about TRT biohacking. And the topic that I'm going to be discussing is the use of a non-aromatizable androgen with low dose tests. Basically what I'm doing right now. So please pay attention to that. It'll be Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'll probably do like some sort of promotion on it on this channel, and then Ryan Root will put it out on Hormones for Me YouTube channel on YouTube. Otherwise, coaching. Guys, if you need to book. This is one of the busiest months leading into the summer. I am extremely busy, which gets to the point where I can't get to the fact-finding calls right away. Right now, I'm still able to do them in under 24 hours to get us started and moving forward. But if you need to book me on coaching, you got to do it as soon as you can. As soon as you can. That's where we're at right now regarding coaching. Otherwise, boys, kick ass, rock on. Content coming this week, so look forward to it. I got a new machine which edits super fast. Okay, super fast. So I could just pump out more content. It used to take an hour just to output a video. Now it takes 12 minutes. I got a super Mac, okay, for content. So you're going to be seeing a lot more content coming out of this guy moving forward. I love you guys. Thanks for the fucking questions. I'll see you this week. Go to livecortex.com. Support us. Buy the Torque Stack. Get coaching if you need it. We got courses. We got a bunch of great things. I'll see you over there, and I'll see you this week. All right? Bye-bye. Great questions. Chat with you boys soon.